The settings menu on the Scan and Cut DX is split into groups rather than pages as we had on the CM series machines. Group 1 features a range of different settings. You access the settings through the spanner icon on screen. The first option we have is the language that the machine uses to display its messages. These can be in any number of languages that you can see on screen there. Just select the one you want and then confirm it with OK. Then we have units of measurements, and these are available in millimeters or inches. We can set a cut area to either size of standard mat, so 12 by 12 or 12 by 24, or we can drag the constraint arrows to select a particular area to use as our cutting mat, and that's useful if we're using A4 cardstock. The pattern interval is the space between shapes on your mat. Generally the default of 1 would be fine for things like cardstock. You'll want to set it to a higher number though if you're using fine fabrics. And the last option in group 1 is the background preview. So if you scan a preview of a piece of cardstock, you can set the contrast on screen so that you can still see your cutting shapes. Group number 2. This features all of your cutting speeds and pressures as well as your draw speeds and pressures. Cut speed obviously is the speed at which the machine will cut, and then the cut pressure is obviously the force that it would use to get through the cardstock or fabric that's on your cutting mat. Defaults are always highlighted with a black box. You can obviously change according to your needs. The cut amount refers to sharp corners on soft, thick material. It's probably not that often you'll come across this one, so I'll leave that for now. Half cut is when you're trying to do things like a kiss cut with vinyl, so you'll cut through the vinyl but not its carrier sheet. So you can switch that on or off. You also then have a pressure adjustment for the half cut, so if it's cutting a little bit too deep, you can adjust it, or vice versa, if it's not cutting just enough, again, you can change that number. The adjustment area is where the blade does its calibration on your cutting mat. And you can tell the machine how much of the top strip of cutting mat to use. Draw speed is useful to change if you're using a slow or fast running ink. That way the machine can keep up. Draw pressure is useful if you're not getting good quality draw lines. You can change that pressure to increase the force used to push the pen against the cardstock. Group 3 are some extra bits and pieces to do with various different parameters. The first one is seam allowance, and that goes all the way from 3 mm up to 5/8 of an inch in industry standard measurements. Fill is when we come to add a fill to a drawn pattern. Here you can choose a particular design, change the spacing between the lines, and change the direction of those lines. So if, for example, I chose the straight lines, they don't just have to run horizontally, I can change them to run diagonally by increasing this to 45 degrees. If you want to close the screen without making any confirmation of your changes, just press the X. To confirm changes, press OK. Additional line again relates to drawn patterns, and it will just basically draw extra lines outside the original drawn line according to the settings you make there. Group 4 is general machine settings. So we can tell the machine to shut down after a certain period of inactivity. We can turn the buzzer or beeper sound on or off, so whichever you prefer. And I can also change the opening welcome screen to on or off. The scanning and position adjustment is useful to calibrate the machine if you are not getting a cutting line matching a scanned image outline. I will cover this in a separate section as it's quite a lengthy process. Well, not lengthy, just slightly more involved. Group 5 is information about your machine. So the machine's number, the software version that you've currently got installed, plus obviously the icons here for you to be able to update it, and then machine info at the end. And I'll tell you this, it's just basic information. So it's the maximum scanning area, maximum pattern numbers, and so on. Group number 6 is the network information. So this is for those machines that have Wi-Fi capabilities. And in there you'll find obviously the ability to turn the Wi-Fi on and off, the setup wizard, and also various other information about the Wi-Fi connection. Group 7 relates to Canvas Workspace, and this is simply just where you would register your machine against your Canvas Workspace account. If you come to change your machine, don't forget to delete your login ID, or if you want to lend your machine to a friend, they can register their account with your machine in order to be able to transfer things via Wi-Fi. Premium functions are accessory kits that we activate via the machine. There are two types of activation. The piercing, the foiling and the embossing you activate on the machine, and a couple of the others like rhinestones you would activate via Canvas Workspace. I'll be covering those in a different video though. Now settings are also contextual on the DX machine. So for example, if I access the settings screen while I'm loading a shape, all it gives me is the things that are relevant to that activity at that time. Again, if I've got my layout screen up, it will only show me what's relevant to that particular activity. If you've got a moment, take a look through your settings menu, and of course if you need to look through this section again, please feel free.